What is going on, everybody? Happy week 14. We are here bringing you the NFL breakdown. Basically, it's probably the biggest week we've had in terms of I think it's the most games we've had all season for a slate. And there's a lot of good options. It's going to be, I think, more spread out ownership. And I mean, obviously, we're probably going to get some COVID news while we're recording because always seems to happen. But it's I'm really pumped up for this slate. I think I'm going to be spread out. I might actually go a little heavier this week. Sheets, what are your sort of initial thoughts? And then we'll go game by game.
Well, first of all, do you know how many fantasy points Jared Goff had the other day? Was it a lot or a little?
He had a decent amount because he had the rushing touchdown.
But was it like a blowout game?
Jared Goff.
Was it more than 25 or anything like that?
No.
No, because in my season long, I'm in the playoffs. I told everybody this last week. I'm in the playoffs, and I have a really, really tough matchup against this guy who's got like the greatest lineup in history. Mm-hmm. So I had a choice between Goff and Tannehill, and Goff projected a little better, but I have AJ Brown. Yeah. So I figured since I was an underdog anyway, I may as well just kind of go for the correlation. So I have Tannehill with AJ Brown. I also got Devonta Adams, and believe it or not, I'm still a huge underdog.
Personally, I've heard a lot of people talking about Tannehill, in DFS, and I've heard some people talk about him for cash this week. So
really?
I would feel pretty. I don't think he's the real cash play, but saying that they were sort of making points that game could go nuts enough to where he would make it.
So since you asked me, I think that this isn't quite the last week, but like once we start getting past like week 15, then it becomes a shit show again with like everybody's resting, everybody's experimenting. So I consider this one of the last two like legit weekends before teams start resting their guys and tanking their guys and screwing around with their guys. So this is going to be really, really tough. But I call this the Bobby slate. The Bobby slate is where there's a zillion games, but usually the Bobby slates are when there are a zillion games and Bobby puts in one lineup that wins 100,000. That's usually the Bobby.
I'll tell you what. I'll put one lineup into the 500. Maybe I'll put two lineups into that because I actually think I already have two. But into the 500 or something like that. Maybe I'll play a 1,500 or something. Just play one and win that one or something like that.
So I don't have a one particular game that I'm targeting. There's going to be a lot of options. So maybe what we could do is just kind of go through game by game, and maybe we can come up with something.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I think that there is a lot of options. It's hard to find guys to marry yourself to, but I actually have some pretty strong takes. So let's do it. Let's go game by game. Let's start off with your boy Tannehill in the first game.
So first of all, this is my shell 2+2 lineup right now. I haven't really done any work on it. This is like my first kind of run. I don't even know who's playing.
It really makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and again, this is my 2+2 lineup. I just got to kind of hang on this week. This week is kind of just stay tough week, and if I make the playoffs, then we get nasty next week. I just got to beat the guy that's under me, who's behind me by 30. He's behind me by 30, so I just got to hold on to a 30-point thing. So I got to just kind of chalk it out a little bit. All right, so Tennessee, Jacksonville. So this is one of my season-long battles. I have AJ Brown, and my opponent has I was about to say Jackie Robinson, James Robinson. I don't know. You just told me just before we started that you were hearing a lot of buzz about Tannehill being a good GP play and cash play. I will just tell you that I have Tannehill as a quarterback ranked like 10th, or maybe 9th or something like that. So to me, it's not that big a deal. And I didn't have. I don't know why I didn't. Why exactly am I not playing Derrick Henry? I don't know. We're going to talk about that. Oh, actually, I do have him right top. Sorry. So Derrick Henry is my top ranked running back actually. So let's highlight him. He's 8,700, and I do like him, by the way, significantly more than Dalvin Cook. I think that the matchup is just that much better, and he's cheaper and all that stuff. Now I don't know how ownership's going to come in. Like right now, it looks like Derrick Henry's one of the chalkier guys on the slate. Mm-hmm. Boy, is Dalvin Cook only going to be 10%?
That's where you start getting into real conversation.
Ooh, goodness gracious. Yeah. All right, so let's start with me saying that Derrick Henry's the best play. But at 25% or 20%, now we can start talking about GPP options. So I do like him. I don't know. Is that what people are doing? People are playing like A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and stuff like that and playing Shenault and stuff. I wasn't really –
I don't think people are playing Shenault.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering what people's enthusiasm is in this game. I don't really have any of the Tennessee guys ranked really high. So that's kind of where I'm at. I was just looking at Henry and not much else.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I don't think that Tannehill is a cash game quarterback, but I've heard enough people talk about him as a potential guy that I was just sort of throwing him out there. There's better options in his range. I'm not going to be using any Tannehill myself this week, so I'm looking for reasons to cross out quarterbacks, not to play
Okay.
him. At the running back position in this game, I'd like both running backs. I have no problem if you want to go either way. There's a lot of good running backs in the slate. I think Henry in a fairly chalky spot, but kind of a bounce back game where you expect them to have their foot on the gas, like one of those spots where you picture him like maybe he's got 60 yards and a touchdown and 14 carries at halftime, but then he gets up like 150 yards in the second half and 2 more touchdowns and breaks the slate. Sort of like the old Derrick Henry thing. This feels like that kind of game where that could happen and you might need him. So I think I'll be probably near the field at the 25 to 30% ish range on him. And honestly, I don't want to be weird that I'm probably going to be near the field on Robinson at 15 to 20%. I don't think that I'm going to go much higher or lower. There's other guys I like better, but there certainly is plenty of upside in a matchup where Tennessee has been just absolutely dreadful defensively lately. So I like Mike Glennon a little bit as a long shot pivot, quarterback pivot. I like him as a pivot off of the chalky Matt Ryan, or what should be a fairly chalky Matt Ryan. And I'm not saying how I'm going to use him a ton, but him to Shark alone, at 10.4K combined with Shark at 5.3. If you want to run back with Corey Davis, and if you're already going to be playing, what's his name, Derrick Henry, it just seems like a natural, natural spot. Mike Glennon's throwing the ball like 40 times a game, and you could actually play Mike Glennon with James Robinson because he'll catch passes too. So I like all of these guys a little bit. In terms of ownership, I definitely want to be ahead of the field on Shark and Corey Davis. I don't think I'm going to end up being – I like the idea of being ahead of A.J. Brown, but I don't see how I'm really going to make that happen when there's other receivers in his range that I just prefer so much ahead of him that are probably even going to be similarly owned. So that's where I'm at. I don't think you're going to see huge ownership outside the running backs in this game. A little bit on the quarterbacks, maybe a combined 10% between the two quarterbacks. But I don't think you're going to see anything huge. I do think Shark is getting overlooked here. And Tennessee's, just dreadful secondary. I know Shark only had 2 catches last week against Minnesota, but he did have 7 targets. It was sort of a down week for him. He always carries a tremendous amount of upside. And these guys really haven't been able to stop anyone through the air. Now, there are more options that Jacksonville has these days, and Glennon will spread it out. But at 5.3, I think Shark is certainly worth taking a shot on. Same thing with Corey Davis on the other side. So you could sort of get like a cheapish little stack in this game if you skip Henry and Robinson, and I think that makes sense.
That's a pretty good leverage play, actually, to play those receivers instead of Robinson and Henry. That's actually really good. Yeah. Would you go back to Ferkser again?
Yeah. So the thing is, I just think there's better options. Personally, I mean, I know. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we still have John, who is questionable, but I thought I sort of was under the impression that he wasn't going to play. So either way, though, I don't think that I'm particularly interested in either of those guys, and not interested in Eifert on the other side either.
Okay.
You could make a really good argument that the defense-wise, that I think Tennessee at 3.1 is certainly on the list of good defenses.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. That's all I got for this one.
All right, and it's a 52-point total.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one. I just, I was off the Tennessee big total last week too. We'll see.
We'll see.
So I'm going to give a shout out here. So this game. So I don't know who's listening, but if he's listening to this, I'm going to shout him out here. And hate to give his takeaway, but so I was chatting with Below Above earlier this week, just out of nowhere, and about this and that, and he has informed me that this game is the smash spot.
I agree.
He's informed me that, and this is I didn't know, that Deshaun Watson was passed over by the Bears or something like that. So he has extra motivation, like he didn't need any already. And he gave me a Houston guys and Bears run backs and all this stuff. And so he put that in my head, and then literally a couple of hours later was when I made my first run of my projections of my whatever. And believe it or not, and it's changed a little bit since then, but going back to Monday, Tuesday, the top value stack for all my stuff based on everything was actually the Bears.
Yeah.
Was Trubisky, Mooney, and Robinson, or you could use Kmet also if you want to do that. So that's where I was at the beginning of the week. I've gotten a little bit off of that as we gotten a little bit later, as I've gotten poisoned, as I like to say, with other stuff. So I'm a little off of it now, but not too off of it that I'm not going to try it, because I can't let that come in, you know what I mean, without me having it. So I also, by the way, I have no problem going right back to David Montgomery, by the way. Yeah, he's not free this week, but he still rates to be one of my top plays, actually, on the numbers. And, you know, maybe he's not going to be 30% this week. He still have to be double digits, but he won't be as chalky as he was last week. And I like him as well. So I am going to go with what I said. I like the Trubisky side of it with those receivers. And I guess run it back with the either Cooks, who busted everybody, who underperformed last week. You try QD again. And yeah.
Yeah, I understand the matchup's tougher and that Cooks let people down last week. I think it's ridiculous that Cooks is going to be like 5% owned at basically. I mean, he's $500 more than he was last week. There isn't a whole lot in this thing. So I do think Cooks getting at least, I don't know, maybe 15% of them or so makes a lot of sense to me this week. Could be one of those easily, like, it's those looking back spots. So I like this game. I don't know how much interest I'm going to end up playing in Watson. I do like Trubisky in the Bears side of the offense, and I like Watson. It's just it's a lot to pay for a quarterback, and I tend to be spending down this week on quarterbacks, which is, I usually just take the guy with the highest ceiling, and I'm sort of going a little bit different with my quarterbacks this week.
Okay.
Montgomery's a good play, and I think that actually probably because there's so many good options, won't get, he'll get, don't get me wrong, he's going to have ownership, but it's not going to be that crazy ownership like it was last week, obviously, and it's not going to be anything we can't, feel comfortable playing him at this price. The thing that always worries me with him is that he just doesn't break that many big plays. I know he broke the one against Green Bay, but he started catching more passes out of the backfield. It's just 6.5. There's other guys like I like better, but he's definitely on my list right now. I don't know how else to put it. I think David Johnson is so cheap on the other side. You could actually consider it, but it's just not probably realistically something I'm going to do. But on a different slate, I would probably consider it. I do think these receivers are interesting because I think there's other good cheap receivers on this slate. That's important to notice because I really did like Mooney or Miller. I was sort of rotating them in my early week guys I was going to take shots on because I just want to pick on this Houston defense in general. I mean, even going back to Montgomery, I mean, this team is 31st in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Houston, they tend to play in games and they get out of hand. I like the over in this game. I have to check the weather again, but everything should be fine. I assume that it's I really like the over in the game, and I am having trouble.
We don't have wind blowing in at Wrigley.
I don't have anything going on right now for it, but I haven't really done an in-depth look this morning yet. So I'll take a look at that as we go on with the show, and we can always revisit if there is anything. But I do think Allen Robinson is one of the better plays as a receiver that, again, sort of gets overlooked because of his in-between pricing range. It's
right.
just he'll probably be just in my Trubisky lineups, to be honest. But I don't mind him at all separate. I think he's a really good play no matter what. They really do. He really does dial in on him. So I wouldn't play Cole Kmet personally. I understand it. I just think that there's plenty of other – I would rather play Jordan Akins on the other side in this game against the one thing the Bears really struggle with through the air is the passing game. So I think Jordan Akins is a terrific play at 2.9.
Okay. So this game's going to get more interest from us than probably the field. So that's That's good news. Yeah,
I feel like with Houston every week you sort of have to have a little bit more interest in any game that they're involved in. You know what I mean? It's just they always tend to play in these weird things. And like the one thing is that let's say the Bears got off to a 3-touchdown lead. I would be counting my money if I had Deshaun Watson because you know what happens in that spot. It's sort of like the old Damian Lillard in the third quarter thing. You know what I mean? He catches fire and they just start bombing everything away. Go for it on every fourth down, all that stuff. All right, are you ready to and if you, by the way, I hate, again, we're going to talk about defenses. I guess you just have to throw them out there. I don't mind the Texans as another cheap option at defense. I always, as much as I like Trubisky, I always like taking the defenses against him just because he makes so many mistakes.
So this next game, Denver, Carolina, I guess I'll go first again. I don't like anything from Denver. So this is where I was at in Carolina. So this is really funny. So on Monday, when I first looked at salaries, it's like really funny. So Monday, I first looked at salaries, I was looking around. I'm like, okay, so McCaffrey will still be out, so we'll take Mike Davis again. We'll put him in our list. Okay, whatever. And then when I saw that McCaffrey was going to be in, I was looking, and then I made my run of like my things, and behind Chicago, which was my top value, my second best given ownership and everything else, as far as quarterback and receivers, was actually Carolina.
It's the chalk, yeah.
So that was with McCaffrey in, right? Because I figured I would get good leverage off of people who played McCaffrey. I would play Bridgewater with the two receivers. Now, again, all this was also dependent on what happened with COVID with these receivers. You know what I mean? So all this was now since then, McCaffrey is now out again. So I guess if I'm gonna, the kids say keep it real, I guess Mike Davis still comes back in play. And maybe the receivers are still okay. But they're just not quite as great as I thought they were. But they're still really cheap. They're still one of my top 5 sets of receivers. But I gotta tell you, Bobby, maybe this is just scoreboard watching or whatever. But do I really want to like spend a lot of money attacking Denver? You know what I mean? I just saw them basically hold Mahomes like the whole game. So it's really scary on a 13-game slate to put so much of my efforts into Carolina receivers against Denver. So I'm a little gun shy with this one.
Yeah, Sheets real quick. Do you happen to have your Discord open? Because I can hear the beeping.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But I totally agree with what you're saying about this. Do you really want to commit that much to this? What's been a really, really good Denver defense, and I am sort of struggling with it because I do think without McCaffrey and DJ Moore, you have like a ton of.
Whoa! You have DJ Moore out?
I have DJ Moore out. That's the only reason these guys.
I have DJ Moore is trending in the right direction.
I don't even. Oh, okay. Well, if he plays, you just throw all that out. Like I don't think the only reason these guys are appealing is because DJ Moore is out. In my opinion, I don't see any positivity. The reason the projections like him is because they have DJ Moore is out.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason why they look so good.
Right, I guess so.
Because if you take DJ Moore and McCaffrey, you're taking about 50% of the team's offense away, which makes all these guys really exciting. Now, if DJ Moore plays, again, we've had no McCaffrey most of the season. The guy who I like in this game, not regardless, but certainly a lot more if DJ Moore doesn't play, is Mike Davis. I think he gets overlooked at running back this week. We've seen big games from him in the past. I know it's been a little rough lately. The one way you are going to get to Denver a little bit is through the running game. I feel like he can also catch passes out of the backfield, especially if there's no DJ Moore. His ceiling for pass catches goes way, way up, in my opinion. And I think he's interesting. So I have Mike Davis as an interesting running back play. And I don't think I'm going to get to Melvin Gordon. I just thought he looked really good on Monday. And I think that that's sort of where I'm at on this one. I'm going to wait to see on Moore because if Moore is out, I love Curtis Samuel. I'll probably skip mostly Robbie Anderson, but I will play some Curtis Samuel. And this weird sort of fluctuating who gets targets in Denver is kind of confusing me. Also, they had the game where they really didn't have a quarterback, so that was weird. But I do think Jerry Jeudy at 4.7, just because of his actual upside, is kind of interesting on the other side if you wanted to run it back. And then the cheap play of the week, one of them, I'm going to name a bunch of guys who are minimum-ish cost. At some point, I think KJ Hamler puts together a game at 3K, so I don't mind taking shots there. But again, I'm not finding myself really, really heavily invested in this game unless DJ Moore is out. And even still, I think it's mostly going to be Davis and Samuel for me, with a little bit of Jeudy, Patrick, and Hamler on the other side, just one at a time.
Okay.
One other guy we should mention too is Noah Fant. Sort of been overlooked because, look, they didn't have a quarterback for one game. He did have 7 targets last week in the other game back. I mean, this guy averages between 5 and basically gets 5 to 10 targets every week. Hasn't really put together that big game except for at the beginning of the season. But I think that there still is upside there for him at 4.1. Ready to move on?
Yeah, I want to move on. So Tampa, for better or worse, is one of my top rated stacks. Kind of. I don't want to say. Look, it's scary. It's weird to say this, but it's scary because of Brady. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem attacking Minnesota. Minnesota's terrible. Okay, like people can throw on them literally all day long. Jacksonville marched down the field on them. You know what I mean? Like I think that Tampa's receivers can have a freaking field day. And I think that even though obviously Brady's had some games where he struggled, I think this is a game where AB can have a great game. This is where Godwin can have a great game. I think that's a very easy game to find receiver stats. You know what I mean? You play those two guys, you run it back with one of the Minnesota guys, or if you want, you can run it back with Dalvin Cook or something like that, and just kind of make it work. I don't think that anything I said is also going to be particularly earth-shattering. And I think a lot of people are going to play him. But one thing, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Bobby, like in a slate like this, I don't want to say you don't want to worry too much about ownership, but there's just so many options. I mean, isn't ownership going to be kind of spread out a little bit? Yeah, so I'm not worried that much. There's like one guy who I'm going to be worried about that I'm just going to have too much of, just even though it's a big slate, whatever, just projects so well, it's ridiculous. But in this game, I mean, that's certainly one way to go. Now, again, we talked about this earlier. Dalvin Cook, I started off the week thinking he was going to be the chalk running back I'd be fading. And now it looks like he's only going to be maybe 10, 12%. And I know Tampa's supposed to have a good run defense, but hell, man, I mean, if you get him at 10%, it's kind of tough to pass up, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely just because the ownership, it definitely is interesting. Yeah, hold on. Sorry about that. I had a little thing that was important. Anyway, no, I think this is a great game to target all the receivers, personally. And both defenses have been lit up by receivers so far. You can just go to Tampa Bay games, saw what happened with what's it called, with Kansas City, which is forgivable, but it also happened with Jared Goff and the Rams. I mean, just in terms of receiver production, you had big games from, I think, Woods and Kupp in that one. So Thielen and Jefferson are going to be like unowned. And basically there isn't a week where you don't want one of these guys. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and
right.
You've got them in a great matchup. I mean, Justin Jefferson, and this, I don't think this, but there are people saying this, that, that trade for Diggs was actually better for Minnesota, because a lot of people think Jefferson's on his way to becoming a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And I don't think that's far off. I think he is legitimately like a top 20 receiver. So is Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen brings a great amount of touchdown equity. Their problem is their prices are a little bit tricky, but I love the idea of running one of the Tampa receivers. My favorite by far is Antonio Brown. It's not even close. Bracing and everything considered, followed by Godwin and Evans. But Evans is going to be the least owned, so you could always take a shot there. I really think that you want to get some exposure to this game. I want these receivers, and I love running one of each of them. Maybe you run. My favorite would, I guess, be Jefferson and Antonio Brown. But I love Thielen and Antonio Brown as well. And Godwin would be my second favorite for Tampa Bay. And the running back thing, because there's no Madison, even though Cook is in a worse matchup, with no backup essentially, it does feel like there is great upside for him here. And if for some reason Minnesota should get out to the lead, you'd think they would try to run the ball. Again, this is a really hard team to run the ball on. And it's a hard team to get, they don't catch passes out of the backfield against them very often. So it's a little bit tricky, but I personally really like the idea of taking a shot on Dalvin Cook. And if you want the real home run play for whatever, for the giant tournaments, Tampa Bay is coming off of a bye here. So things might be a little bit different. You might see a little bit more Leonard Fournette, and he's near minimum price, $4,500.
Whoa, that is one off the board one, huh?
So, and there's a lot of good running backs, so maybe you don't get there. But I mean, if they do turn some things around, that's partly why I love AB so much this week. Like I might have like 40% AB.
Really, LFG, man, I love it.
I mean, we have to take some stand somewhere, and like this seems like it makes the most sense. He's finally had time to acclimate to the offense. They're coming off of a bye week. I would just think that Brady would get more and more in sync with these guys, and at the same time, Leonard Fournette, Tampa Bay hasn't been playing that well, and even though Jones has been terrific, you might see Fournette get a little bit more of the action in this one. So just, I'm going to have tons of pieces. I'm going to be ahead of the field and everyone in this game, but no one more so than Antonio Brown. Everybody else I mentioned is probably a 10 to 20%, or not any higher than that.
Does what's his name still pop? Kyle Rudolph always looks like a good secondary play.
He always looks like it, but I'm not really sure that he is. And also we've got Irv Smith playing. I've got.
Irv Smith. What serves? There it is. He's not expected to play. So makes it easier. Okay.
Oh, who is it?
Kyle Rudolph doubtful. Makes it easier.
It does a little bit, except for that. Then I'm kind of interested if Irv Smith does play.
Yeah, he was limited on Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think I'm interested enough, but Irv Smith would be – you could go to Irv Smith if you wanted to if there's no Rudolph.
Okay.
All right. Ready to move over to your boys?
4 wins in a row.
They look good.
Well, I mean, it's funny because they had the benefit of the schedule, and then they freaking beat Seattle. They won a stupid game against Washington. They won a game that's like the worst team in football, the Eagles. Then they beat a totally depleted Bengals team. So I'm like, oh, I don't believe any of this. And then freaking they went into Seattle like it was nothing. It was they're right there in it. And I'm pretty sure I think Washington also is like 4 in a row or something like that. Like the NFC East is rising from the ashes. They might actually get one team at 7 wins before the season's over. We'll see.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, I didn't get to anybody from this game, literally on either side. So I'm gonna defer this one to you.
I have a tiny bit of interest in both defenses.
Okay.
And I think I don't care how big the slate is. DeAndre Hopkins is 7,600 in an adequate matchup. The defense has been terrific for them, don't get me wrong. But overall, they're about a middle of the road passing defense.
Okay, let's not get carried away. Okay, they've been a good defense. Okay, they've been passable. They've played the worst of the worst until last week, right? So I don't want to saying they're like a good defense or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean they've been playing. Yeah, that's my point though. So you get a 3% owned DeAndre Hopkins when he could. Right. You've got receivers that are 2K more than him that are going to be 30% owned or 25% owned, which are even justifiably. But if you can get Hopkins and play some of these other guys instead at just no ownership, you got to have some interest in this. I think you do anyway. And
sure, why not?
If this game was in Arizona, I actually feel like that things would change. People love to play the games on turf more.
Yeah.
Which even makes some sense. But like just the fact that Slayton is so cheap and Shepard is so cheap, I'm just going to mention them. I don't know how much I'll end up actually getting to them, but I don't mind if you want to run those guys back. I do think I'm going to make a priority to try and get at least 10 to 15%, maybe a little higher even, of DeAndre Hopkins. And then the other guy I want a lot of at tight end, I love Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
I think at 4.3, he makes a ton of sense. We've seen sort of hit or miss weeks from him. I know he didn't have the big one last week. He did still have 8 targets. He's been getting a lot of work, and I personally have interest in him. There's a lot of guys in that 4-ish K range at tight end, but he's one of the ones I like. So mostly it's going to be Ingram and Hopkins for me. I do think Hopkins is a guy you really want to try to prioritize. Like when there's superstar receivers who are already, and oh, by the way, here's some coach speak stuff, or not coach speak, whatever, like, things you hear. Hopkins was pissed about the way that Kyler's been playing. He's pissed at them throwing the ball all over these other, Dan Arnold and all these guys. You could see it on his face in the last game. Apparently there was some stuff in the locker room. I don't know how much of this is true. These are all speculations I've heard from NFL shows. But any extra thing to give me an excuse to play DeAndre Hopkins, who might still be the best receiver in the NFL or one of the top 3, at 7.6, have no ownership in a fine matchup, I just think I'm going to hate myself if I don't do at least some of it.
Sounds good to me. Are you going to play any Kenyon Drake?
No.
Okay. I wasn't going to be on him, but just because you told me what his price was, Darius Slayton at 4,200 does seem
it's crazy, right?
Pretty appealing. And I'll tell you something else. I guess he's not going to get there, but Golden Tate at 3,600. I mean, what's become of this? It's not like he's phased out. I mean, he has 4 of 9, 5 targets. You know what I mean? I don't know.
The only thing that worries me about him on a full slate is, can he deliver enough big plays? Like, basically, I look at him as a guy who has to get 2 touchdowns. Now, look, he can get 1 touchdown and have 12 fantasy points or 15 and get you there, but it's almost impossible for him to get 100 yards receiving. Whereas Slayton can break 1 big play. Shepard might catch 9 balls and end up with 100 yards or something like that. That seems more possible to me than Tate. But I understand at 3.6, you certainly could consider it. I just am taking a shot more on these hopeful long shots like Mooney, who could break a big play. I guess when I'm paying down, sheets, that's something I try and do a lot in football, and it's not always right. But I want the guys who have that home run upside. The weirdest part is the best example of this, and it's relevant only because of what just happened this past week, was forever nobody played Cole Beasley because he's just underneath routes. He's not going to have the big games. But if you look at him this year, that guy's had like 5 20-plus fantasy point games, including a 34 one on Monday night. So Golden Tate sort of fits a similar type of mold, a guy who's going to go underneath a lot of bubble screens, but I don't know if he has enough to really break a slate open.
So the Kansas City Miami game is really interesting to me because I really go back and forth on this. Like my initial instinct is, so, Kansas City basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Sleptwalk through the game against Denver and just kind of got there when they needed to. And I kind of, in a way, at my first glance, I really feel bad for Miami this game. That I feel as though Mahomes and Hill and these guys are just going to conspire to freaking just roll and score make 450 yards and 5 touchdowns in like the first half or something like that, and say, listen, we're not sleepwalking through any other games. We're going to take care of this and just be up 28-7 at the end of the first quarter. And when I first do my first runs, I'm like, okay, let's go. Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, and rock the house. And then I remember that, the other team gets paid too, and I've been on Miami and the coaching staff as a good team, like actually towards the end of last year. And Miami does have good corners. They're not that any corner can guard Tyreek Hill, right? But they're going to try to come up with something. And I do think, look, KC rates my second best stack pretty much, both raw points and whatever, and even to some extent based on value. So I think that they're going to be owned this week. I've just heard too many touts also saying, oh, I'm just going to just play Hill. I don't care, whatever it is. But I do like them a lot. On the Miami side, presuming he plays, this is going to be one of those sucker plays, I guess. I'm just going to end up playing Gaskin. He's really cheap. He's like I think he might be the only running back there now. And you can run a little bit on Miami. And if you can't, he'll get some balls out of the backfield too. So I feel as though I'm going to play him in cash, meaning my 2+2 thing. I don't think I'm going to have any big run backs here. I don't know what I want to do. I guess you'd have to play Parker if you were going to do that, or the tight end. But obviously KC's skill positions are really, really strong.
Yeah, I personally think if there's ever a week to try and fade them, I understand that it's the bad week because of the way that they played, and you're right, they could come out just absolutely going nuts. I think Miami's defense is pretty good. I'm not really sure how much all that matters. That's what worries me. I just don't see myself getting to many of these guys in non-stack environments. Kelsey would be my favorite of the receiving options. It's interesting though, because Tyreek Hill is going to be lowish owned, and the numbers are hard to ignore. But at the same time, do we play Tyreek Hill? Do we play an unowned Nuke Hopkins for almost 1,000 cheaper? Do we pay almost 1,000 more for a guy who's just a much better play, in my opinion, in Devonta Adams? So I think I'm going to be just sort of off of this a little bit. I might at the end just build a couple stacks of this game, but leave everything else out. I just think I'm going to be off the KC side of it for the most part, with maybe a Kelsey here and there. I do think that Myles Gaskin is one of the better plays, but he's going to be, he's going to be owned, but I don't think it's going to be crazy. I think he certainly is one of the better running back cheap options. It's funny because Miami wasn't really running the ball that much, but the one way you can really control the game and try and compete against KC, and they honestly weren't able to stop Melvin Gordon the other night. So if you're going to give 20 touches to Myles Gaskin and he's going to catch some balls out of the backfield, I certainly like his floor and his ceiling in this one. So I think he's the best play in the game. I mostly am going to stay away from the rest of it outside of stacks. And we did get word, just while we were on air, that Ahmed is officially out. So Gaskin should have all the work he can handle.
All right, so you got a 13-game slate, right? So I can't get away from this. This is probably my favorite I guess low-owned spot of the day. I mean, you have Andy Dalton revenge.
Revenge. I knew you were
going back to Cincinnati. He's got skilled position players who are just really in the groove right now with Cooper and Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. I'm telling you, Cincinnati's a freaking disaster. Their defense is better than their offense, if that's saying anything. But I think Dallas, and this is scary because Dallas is like really definitely underperforming. They've had issues this year. Let's put it that way. I think all these guys are in play, but think my favorite is just going to be Zeke and the defense. I really feel that a lot of running backs are going to take money, and I think that I'm looking at Zeke's ownership, and what is he, 6,500 or something like that? I'll tell you, he didn't look bad this past week, by the way, and he hasn't looked bad in a couple of weeks, and it's a 40. It's like a 2-point total here, but I just can't find myself getting off of this stuff. Like the weird thing is also as on the other side of this, I was kind of hoping somehow that like Joe Mixon would be back, because if there were a time for him to come back, I mean, no, Dallas can't stop anybody running the ball. So I would have probably taken a shot at him. I just don't think Bernard's like good enough, you know what I mean, as a runner to get that done. But I don't know. I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to play these Dallas guys, and it's probably too big of a slate to get away with it, but I'm going to try it.
I don't think it is at all. And I just tell you, my favorite play by far in this game is Michael Gallup. It's not even close. Okay. I love Michael Gallup. And I watched that game against Baltimore. I think this kid's really talented. And if you notice, every time they get within like the 40-yard line, they start looking for him for home run plays. They want him near the end zone. I think he had 11 targets the other night. And I think out of the three, he caught 7 balls out of his 11 balls. I think 3 of those that he didn't catch were actually in the end zone targets. I'm not totally sure. It might have been 2. But, he had a big game on Monday against a good Baltimore, or Tuesday, whatever day it was, against a good Baltimore defense. He's 3.8K. Certainly should appear as one of the better values on the slate. And I like Perriman on the Jets, but I think that when he's
wrong game. Hold on.
I know.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
I like Perriman on the Jets. He's 3.9.
Oh.
If you want to switch over at a third the ownership to get Michael Gallup, makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But that, you can see what I'm saying? Like, I just think I really like Gallup's upside here. I also think CeeDee Lamb has got plenty of upside for his price at 4.8K. They throw the ball a ton. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot, I think. Or not, they're not going to have to throw. They always throw the ball a lot. I'm having trouble with the Zeke thing. I know it's the right play, and the ownership seems too low, but I don't know what happened with that guy. I see no burst from him. I see no explosiveness. Even when he gets there, he sort of meeks his way there. It's not exciting to me. Geo Bernard, I feel actually similarly to how I feel Zeke. I'll have exposure to both those guys some, but mostly my interest is going to be in the passing game, specifically Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. And then I love, look, if you want to run on the other side, I'm just going to say, like, he got ejected in the second quarter of the last game, early in the second quarter, Tyler Boyd. And
right.
He already had, one catch for 72-yard touchdown before that.
He sure did.
Tyler Boyd has a massive, massive ceiling regardless of who's playing quarterback. So I'm not worried about it. I'm going to take a shot with Tyler Boyd. I'm going to take some shots. I'm not going to play the A.J. Green thing at minimum cost.
Right.
He came out this week.
What about the other guy, though?
Yeah, I do like T. Higgins. Okay. I don't know how much Brandon Allen can throw the ball downfield enough to get like a big play out of him. You know what I mean? That's sort of what I like about Higgins. Him and Burrow seem to have a nice connection on those long go routes down the sideline. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the same thing. I'm not going to play Dalton, but I do really, really like these Cowboys receivers, particularly Lamb and Gallup. And then I think people are going to get on Gallup as the weekend comes around. I've got him projected at 5% ownership. I think he ends up probably closer to 10. But him and CeeDee Lamb both stand out as being exceptionally excellent values. And again, T. Higgins, but especially Tyler Boyd make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and Dallas right now is the worst defense in football. They're my top defense on the slate so far. So
no, they're mine too. I mean, they're 2,400. It's really hard not to like them. And what's great is that I sort of thought they'd be everybody's, but they really aren't.
Oh, really?
And if they were going to be everybody's, I was just going to say, well, you could just switch it over and play the Bengals defense on the other side of this game.
Yeah.
The good thing is these teams, I don't see Cincinnati being able to run the ball effectively enough to make this a slow game. Even if Bernard does get there, it's going to be, I think, through the passing game. So I think with that much passing going on, you're going to have even more opportunities for these Dallas guys to really, the game won't be played as slow of a pace as I think. I love the over in this game too. Anyway, I like this spot a lot.
All right, so we'll start the 4 o'clock games. You could be the first in the 4 o'clock games.
Okay.
What do you think of Jets? Yeah.
So this is my original stack. I first of all, Sam Darnold is my other quarterback pivot off Matt Ryan. And honestly, I actually really think I like this. I know that they scored points against the Raiders and they weren't really doing much with the passing game. They went through the ball 24 times. I don't think Darnold. I think he's actually a capable passer, and I would expect 30 plus passes in this game because they should be trailing most of the game. So maybe Darnold may not make them as much sense to anybody. We obviously have to have some interest in some of these receivers. I love Perriman. Seems like a great spend down. Again, him versus Gallup, interesting conversation. But you could even play them both in certain lineups, and you could some of those expensive guys that we were talking about earlier to play with your Henrys and whatnot. Jay Crowder would be my favorite play in this game, assuming that he plays. If he some reason doesn't play, I will jump because first of all, Jamison Crowder. I say Jay Crowder. Happy NBA season, by the way. That's why I'm distracted by it. Jamison Crowder's numbers with Sam Darnold are significantly different than they are with any other quarterbacks the Jets have thrown out there. He looks at him a lot more. He looks at him near the goal line a lot more. I actually think Darnold is competent enough. And these guys at 5.4 and 3.9, I just think they make a lot of sense. I almost am tempted to even throw in Braxton Berrios into a couple lineups, and I probably will in the Millionaire Maker.
Do we like him more than Jeff Smith?
I personally am just going to give it to the guy who was a first-round pick who has maybe some perceived upside still. So, yes, I do. Like it was just my first-round pick 2 years ago. Braxton Berrios, obviously a terrible pick, but by the Patriots. But I don't know that unless I'm getting something wrong. I think that's the right guy, right? But I just want to play some of the passing game against Seattle. They're going to be throwing it a lot. These guys are cheap. They have plenty of room. Seattle's defense is absolutely garbage, regardless of what they've looked like. I know the Giants didn't put any points on them the other day, but that doesn't mean much to me. I don't think the Giants' offense is exactly where it's at. I love that Tyler Lockett and Metcalf are going to be unowned. I don't know what to do with that, but if I'm going to play so many Jets, that's the way I'm going to run it back, is with one of those two guys. And then Chris Carson's going to be popular for everybody. I'm just going to remind everybody, and I think he's a good play. Been getting a little bit more work shared with Carlos Hyde lately. Hasn't been getting all the touches, you know what I mean? Had 13 rushing attempts and 8 previously coming off the injury. Carlos Hyde still factors into the offense. He only had 2 rushing attempts the other day, but he was on the field a reasonable amount, and he did have 3 catches. But maybe Carson, this is the one they work him back and they get him going. But the Jets have been beaten up both sides, but they've mostly been beaten through the air. So I could see like a first half from TK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, more likely Metcalf in my opinion, but where they put up like 30. I mean, we've just seen these Jets. I swear they've been the team against them. The Stack has won like 4 or 5 weeks this season, and there's only been however many weeks. So we have to play some of it. I'll play a little bit of Russ. He's one of my other quarterbacks, but I sort of like the idea of playing Darnold, playing one of the receivers from Seattle, and then playing 2 of the receivers from the Jets. I'll definitely have some stacks like that.
So this is my analysis, and this is like really anti-DFS or whatever it is, but this is the way I'm looking at this game. In a similar way that you kind of felt bad for Miami, Casey was coming off that, I would say dud, whatever. Seattle just came off like just an abysmal loss at home to the Giants. The Jets are coming in there. I mean, Seattle's going to put a beating on them. I mean, if they have the ability, right? They're not going to take the Jets lightly. I promise you, because you know what? Carroll's the type of guy that can't even distinguish the Giants from the Jets. You say, oh, it's 2 teams, whatever. So he's not going to take them both lightly. That's a really bad loss at home last week. I mean, for a playoff contender, right? So they're going to come out and they're going to kill people. Now, with that said, one thing that we kind of joke about, but if I don't have all the examples, but you're going back to remember when the Bill O'Brien got fired. Next week, Houston's offense was amazing. It happened another time. Even this past week, after Patricia or whatever got fired from Detroit, with the new coach, they went freaking ballistic. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And not that these guys are the freaking greatest team in the world, but the Jets just fired their defensive coordinator. After that ridiculous call last week. So for whatever it's worth, whoever's the defensive coordinator, and the defense in general, they're gonna play hard, and they're gonna just try to come up with something. And to make it even more of an anti-DFS analysis, look, this has been my natural instinct, is that the first thing that the new defensive coordinator, whoever it is going to do, in light of what happened last week, is drop everybody back in zone every freaking possession and not allow the deep ball. Okay, so for me, if they get away, really, probably shouldn't analyze this way, but for me, I'd rather have Lockett in the short patterns than trying to find Metcalf against triple coverage, which is probably what they're going to end up doing in light of how that game last week ended. And that's also why Carson's kind of also probably a good play. is that I think that's whatever Carson dump-offs, Carson runs, I think those are going to be open all day long. So I don't think I'm going to play Metcalf, just, again, for that stupid reason. And I also, by the way, Seattle's defense is garbage. You will note that they are in my cash game lineup.
Of course, Seattle's defense is one of the best plays in the slate. They're going to be
of course. I'm not going to play Metcalf. And again, he's obviously has 40-point upside every game, right? And I fear fading Seattle too much because, like I said, Seattle, they're and if God forbid if they're up 14-0, they're gonna put the freaking pedal to the metal. You know what I mean? They're gonna leave no doubt in this game if in fact they can do it. So
basically, I love what you just said, by the way. I think that was a pretty astute observation about what you said about what the defense is going to do about playing zone, and that Lockett really is a zone buster. Like if you try to play zone against this team, he's perfect at finding those little holes. And whereas you're going to have Metcalf in double or triple coverage, basically, I see that totally there. I'm still going to have some Metcalf, but I think you've sort of swayed me a little bit on the Lockett side. But based on what you're saying, don't you think it would make sense then to play Wilson with Lockett and then run it back with one or two of these receivers just based on volume for the Jets?
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be kind of chalky though if you do that?
I don't see the Jets receivers being owned other than, I think Perriman's going to have ownership, but I don't think.
Right, but who else do you play? You want to play, like you said, Berrios or Crowder? You play Crowder, right? I keep forgetting. Right, okay.
Yeah, Crowder. I think you can literally run two of them because.
So wait. So let's talk about the other elephant in the room. What do you think of Ty Johnson?
I don't.
Okay, he had a zillion fantasy points last week on a zillion touches.
That's because Frank. So we're going to assume that he's now the starter ahead of Frank Gore.
Yeah.
Did they say that?
No.
I don't have that. I have Frank Gore as the starter.
Well, that's why we're going to assume it. I don't know.
So if we get that word, then we can play Ty Johnson. I'm fine with that. I'll actually put him on my list because
I'll just tell you this: like if he gets 20 fantasy points again, and you don't have, what the hell am I doing? You know what I mean?
One thing that's important for people to know is while the Jets may not have intentionally been trying to lose, the motivation for them to win is at an all-time high. First of all, they got rid of one of the biggest assholes in all of sports as their defensive coordinator. And anybody who's watched that show on the year that he was with, I think he was with the Browns that year.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
He's such an ass. But they got rid of him, and they now don't. They're now there's nobody else with just one win. Everybody's got two wins, so they can win a game. They're going to win this game. But the motivation now is there for them to actually really go out and try and win games.
Yes.
They don't have any lack of that. So I think they put their best foot forward. Now, if that's good enough, I don't think so. But Seattle's defense is so bad. I don't know if I want to take the over in this game, but I certainly would take the Seattle over 16 points. I think Seattle's going to score in the 20s. I don't believe in Seattle's defense. I'm sorry.
You mean the Jets will score in the 20s?
Jets will score in the 20s at least. Yeah, that's where I'm at personally. And I think they are, look, the conventional wisdom has been, they're going to start running the ball now. Every time since that's become an issue, Seattle has looked like garbage. So if they decide to let Russ cook, I think you play Russ with Lockett, you run it back with those two receivers, and I don't think that's shocking. I mean, Lockett's going to be like 5% owned.
Well, it sounds good to me then.
Let's do it. All right, I'm into it.
All right, you want to move on?
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think in the next one, Indy Vegas?
So Indy Vegas, I'm trying to look at my notes for who I have here. I don't have – the only thing I'm going to say is that, look, we've got the rebirth of T.Y. Hilton the last couple weeks. We finally hit 11 targets, 8 catches for 110 yards, and a touchdown against Houston the other day. I did play some of him last week. In general, you want him at home, all that stuff. I still think I might take a few shots. At 5.1, it's getting a little bit pricier, but it's still T.Y. Hilton. If he keeps playing – if they keep looking for him, 11 times a game, he's going to be a phenomenal play, and he's not going to have much ownership. So I do like that. And basically, that's mostly all of it. I understand if someone wants to take a shot on Zach Pascal. I hope that he doesn't get there this week because I sort of take shots on him all the time. But there's other cheap receivers I like better. And then the running game, I'm just not going to mess with this. I'm not going to mess with the running game on the Raiders side. I think Jonathan Taylor is here's your guy. Here I'm going to say it. This could be at the spot where we see another one of those Jonathan Taylor games. He's looked really good in the snaps that he's gotten. They've had both running backs go off a couple times, but I love his price and I love his potential upside, especially if they get out to a big lead and they're using him to ground and pound away rather than Nyheim Hines in a shootout. It could go either way for both of these guys, but I think that for the most part, I'm not going to play Nyheim Hines, but I will play some Jonathan Taylor. I think there's enough upside to he could end up being the best, under 7K play at running back.
I've got T.Y. Hilton in my season-long team, and currently I'm benching him for this game.
Ooh.
Well, you tell me. I mean, the one person who has a chance to play him. I'm not starting him ahead of AJ Brown or Devonta Adams, but I can't start him ahead of Marvin Jones either. I mean, can I?
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. Yeah.
So he's gonna have to sit. It's gonna be annoying, man. He's going against one of the worst pass defenses around.
But also, I say this every year with Phillip Rivers. He gets locked into his best receiver or his whatever. Like it always happened with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen would get off to these slow starts. Then the last 8 weeks of the season just be by far the best receiver in the NFL. And it was weird because it happened like every year with Rivers. I don't know what that is exactly, but maybe maybe he really is dialing in on him. I do think that I understand why Marvin Jones is better, but for upside, ownership, everything else involved, I'm going to take some shots on T.Y.
I agree. You like the running game at all for Vegas? I mean, depending on who plays?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
The
only guy I like in this game, again, and actually, I don't really like him too much this week. Just because I honestly would rather pay more for Kelsey. Is Darren Waller, but I would rather pay more for Kelsey, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's a shame. I always want to play Waller, and it's funny because it feels like it's not obviously chasing, but even if you wanted to call it that, the only thing that's crazy is like no one's going to play him this week. But like there's no team in the league that's been better against tight ends for fantasy production that give up less than Indy. So it's kind of hard to justify not playing him over Kelsey to me. I'm with you.
All right, what do you think of Green Bay, Detroit?
Okay, so this is obviously another one of the spots. I actually thought Aaron Rodgers would be even more popular when I first saw the things. I thought he was going to end up being the chalky quarterback for some people, but he's going to be one of the more popular ones. I like Aaron Rodgers. I'll play some of him. I have more quarterbacks. I have like 6 quarterbacks that I'm using, maybe 7. I'm not interested in particularly in Marvin Jones. Okay, let me rephrase this. If it's all going to depend for me, the Detroit side, whether or not DeAndre Swift plays. If DeAndre Swift plays, I'm very happy just to play DeAndre Swift. But I want to say that Aaron Rodgers has always been great in these matchups. They haven't used the running game quite as much. I just think in this spot, I cannot resist Aaron Jones. Low ownership, 7.6K. He's in I know I didn't, I don't know where I'll end up with him, but I just think that I could see him so easily going for like 180 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. The Lions' running defense has been absolutely garbage. I know Aaron Jones, it's not a split situation, but he obviously is, he does have to lose some touches to Williams and all that. He's still their guy. I'm going to bet heavy on Aaron Jones having a monster week. And I like Swift on the other side, but what I'm going to do is where I play, I'll play Swift more where I play Devonta Adams, and I'll play, if I was to play a Marvin Jones instead of Aaron Jones, I would play him with Aaron Jones. I play Marvin Jones with Aaron Jones. I want the receiver running back instead of the receiver running back. Does that make sense?
How much are you going to play of Devonta Adams?
Right now, I've got about 30%, which should be a little bit above the field. But it's hard because I actually think what I'm doing is I'm splitting up him and Jones a lot. I think you might just see an absolute offensive explosion here. They can't stop anything that Green Bay is going to want to do. So everybody on Green Bay's side of this is well in play. The guy who'll get overlooked is Thielen. I think Thielen is a really good play too. But it's hard not to have some interest in Devonta Adams when you compare him. Do I want Devonta Adams or Tyreek Hill? This is the highest projection I've seen on a receiver across the board in probably 2 years. And I don't know. It's hard for me to resist. But at the same time, we could just play Aaron Jones instead. And, one of these guys is likely to have a monster game, 30 fantasy point game. And going with the lower owned Aaron Jones might be a cool way to be a little bit different. And then obviously, you do have to consider Marvin Jones because of, the situation with no Galladay and all that. And he's had some decent games lately where you'd want him, but I don't think I'm going to play that much of him this week.
What about those other clowns? What about Cephas, guys like that?
Not for me personally. I get it. I know he broke up the big play last week, and
or Sanu or anybody like that. No.
It just feels so thin on a full slate, but
sure. Galladay could have a limited role.
That's even then they're really not interested. Then you just skip them all. I think. I really do.
So this is my take on the game. So Green Bay rates to be my second best stack with Jones, what's his name? Sorry, Rodgers, Adams, and Tanyan, as you mentioned. You mentioned it's the top projection you've seen in a while. So I've been running these spreadsheets for like the last 2.5 years or whatever. And I will just say that based on the way I construct the value stuff, this is actually the biggest gap between a receiver and the next highest guy that I've seen since I've really started constructing these things, whatever that's worth. Yeah, he's a good play. Aaron Jones, again, remember, I played a decent amount of him last week, and I consider myself a little lucky. I don't know if you're supposed to look at things this way. So if I told you he was 14 for 52, right? 14 rushes for 52 yards and 3 targets, 3 receptions would probably be, and that's, so if you, now you're supposed to do this, but you back out the 77-yard touchdown, that's what you have, right? So, you're just one break away from someone having smashed to someone being, oh my God, I can't believe I played him at 7,200. So it's interesting, but I agree with you. They are what, a 7-point favorite. So I think that there are definitely paths where he can, again, he can certainly get there. I don't know if he's going to be. He definitely rates to be one of my top running backs. Let's put it that way. And if you tell me he's going to be low owned, I'm certainly going to try him. But I think I'm going to end up with too many liners with Adams, and I don't know if I want to play both of them together. So I just think by just the way I construct, I might end up phasing myself out. You know what I could do? I could say either Jones or Adams in each line. I mean, in every line, I could do that too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're so high on it, and I'm high on Adams as well. I just think there's other routes in wide receiver that I'm trying to look at, but I totally am into him. I think between the two of them, actually, in my initial builds, I think I do have one of them in each thing. I do think that there's a way, though, that you could play this game as a funny stack and play Jones and Adams. Okay. It's thin, but you can, and if you run it back with T.J. Hawkinson, who we didn't really talk about much as a tight end, I actually kind of like him. And potentially just hoping for the crazy shootout, you could play Swift also if he does play. It's a weird way to stack a game without using the quarterbacks and everything. But I mentioned other cheap quarterbacks I like you can play with cheap guys like Darnold, like Glennon, even we're going to get into that one really soon in Matt Ryan. So it's an I think there's a lot of ways you can stack this, and I actually think you can probably get away with it, even with their designating that much salary, because there's a chance that those guys could combine for 4 touchdowns and 300 plus yards. You know what I mean? It's really on the board.
I'll say this. I alluded to this earlier when I talked about the Detroit going off in their first game without the coach. I mean, there was a lot of player speak after that game saying, "Oh my God, this new whatever's going on now it's fun to play again." They were able to come from way down and score 100 points against the Bears. Mm-hmm. They're going to be slinging it. I mean, that's for sure.
Not to mention they always play Green Bay tough. Yeah. They always lose at the last second. I mean, I think Rodgers has 3 Hail Marys to beat them or something crazy.
Those are always in Detroit, right? Those games, right? That's right.
Yeah. But I think it's okay. I mean, either way, they're gonna. I don't think it's gonna matter much in this one. Rodgers doesn't. He's not a guy who I ever think about where he's playing because he just puts. Although, if he always played on turf, he might be considered even higher on the all-time great quarterbacks list. But he's pretty awesome even in the cold weather in Green Bay. So.
All right. I guess I'll ask your opinion on this game by asking this. I'll start with this. How chalky / how good of a play or not is J.D. McKissic?
So he's going to be owned for sure, right? I think this is really a dangerous spot. I'm going to have some of them, don't get me wrong, because the price is right. The targets are crazy. So I think Peyton Barber is an interesting play. That's where I'd be looking more, and I think that's what I'm starting to do a little bit. Like if I'm going to take that shot here, I might just play Peyton Barber instead. He's going to get more of the running game work. He has much higher touchdown upside. Obviously, has a lower floor, but they gave him all the work the other night with after Gibson left, except for when they were passing coming back late. I think J.D. McKissic until the last few drives, only had a couple fantasy points and then got all of those 10 receptions. So look, I'll have some McKissic. I love guys in the PPR things. Obviously, you can't play McKissic on FanDuel. If you do, you're making a mistake. But playing him on DraftKings at 4.9, yeah, I'm going to have some interest. I think he'll be a 25% owned. And I think you're going to get Peyton Barber, at 3 to 5% maybe. So I would just personally rather go that way. And that's pretty much where I'm at.
I'll tell you this. I will. I had the easiest pivot in the world off of this. I'm not going to have much of McKissick because if I play McKissick with the possibility that Barber outsnaps him and outrushes him and all of this stuff, I'm going to just play Giovanni Bernard. That's just what I'm going to do. He's the only back there for Cincy. And I would much rather play Giovanni Bernard than Jamie McKissick. That's my take.
I agree.
What else do you like from this game? You like you like Logan Thomas at all?
I don't love the matchup, but I'm okay with taking some shots. The problem is he's going to be pretty popular, but he's on my list of tight ends. I don't feel incredibly strong conviction. Although he looked really good the other day, and finally put up that monster game against Pittsburgh. It's important to note also like somewhat of a short week for Washington. I don't have a ton of interest in the other spots in this game, and I don't like playing the passing games ever against San Francisco. The one thing I would probably get some exposure to is Brandon Ayuk, just because I've been on this guy. I know I've mentioned it to you a number of times. I think he's the real deal. I think he's their best receiver, far better than Deebo Samuel in my opinion. I think they know it. He's been incredibly consistent. Look at his game log: 20, 19.7, 23, 17.5 his last 4 games. They've looked a little better on offense. I know Washington's a tough defense, but just at 5.7K as sort of just a, hey, he could put up by the way, he almost had 30 the other night because he had a ball that just was past his fingertips in the end zone right at the end. But I sort of like him as a wild card play, but really nobody else I want to make a staple of my lineups except for I'll probably be 15% on McKissick and 15% on Barber, honestly. And honestly, that might even dwindle if depending on what else opens up.
Yeah, for me, there's way too big of a slate for me to play literally any of the skill positions in this game. I'm not going to get to McLaurin this time. And on the San Francisco side, there's just, they're just, I want to say balanced in the wrong way, but they're just too balanced. They run a lot of different shit. You know what I mean? They have different running backs coming in the game. Just when you think you have Mostert locked down, he gets to the 1 yard line and they bring in Jeff Wilson. You know what I mean? And then it's craziness. And then they have all these receivers between Ayuk and Bourne and Samuel, and they got everybody running jet sweeps. And what's his name is good, man. Shanahan's good. He keeps everybody off balance. You don't know where he's going, and that's one of the reasons why, from a fantasy perspective, they're tough to play. And Washington is, they're tough enough defensively where the combination of not knowing where the targets are going or the usage is going, with the efficiency might not being so good, plus the depth of the slate just gets me off of these guys. I happen to have, just for disclosure, Logan Thomas right now in my cash lineup just because he fits. But
sure.
But it's definitely not the greatest game.
No. It is interesting that Logan Thomas is going to have all the ownership and Jordan Reed is going to have none. And they basically are the same projection-wise. They're very close.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's just kind of so if you're playing GPPs, look, if I was playing cash, I'd certainly think Logan Thomas would make the list because he's pretty consistently getting the targets. But I just don't know that I need to do that in GPPs at pretty high ownership.
Yeah, for me, actually, Thomas actually projects pretty well for me, actually. The next guy behind him is a guy we didn't talk too much about, was actually Jordan Akins, back from the Houston.
I talked about him. I said he's my favorite spend all the way down.
And the other guy we're going to get to in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
More like 6 minutes, but okay.
All right, you ready to move on? Yeah, this is not one I love for regular DFS. I think this game is going to be kind of ugly. I do like both defenses in this game, especially the Washington defense. I love this. This Washington defense is legit. They're a good defense. All right, ready to move on to New Orleans and Philly? Should I get it started?
Yeah, go for it.
Love Dallas Goedert. He's probably the guy I'll end up with.
Let's go. There you go. There's something.
Look, what's a young quarterback's best friend is this tight end, not to mention the tight end that, this guy has 13 catch games under his belt. They'll throw him the ball. And look at his targets, 7, 10, 6, 6. And then he was hurt before that a little bit and coming back from stuff. But I expect him to have somewhere around those 6 types of targets. I don't usually love playing tight ends against New Orleans, although they haven't been quite as stingy this year. But at 4K, Goddard's a guy who we were paying 6K for while Ertz was playing last year. And that's just when they had a competent quarterback. So it's not like Hurst has to be great. He just has to be confident enough or just rely on him like crazy. And again, much better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel just because of the PPR. And I think you could see a lot of passes going his way. I'm just going to lay off of all of these, all the receivers in this game. The only one I would consider is Michael Thomas. I just don't think I'm going to end up realistically getting there. But I do have a guy who I love in this game. I absolutely love, and I don't care how much this comes back to bite me. Huge priority for me is to play Alvin Kamara. 7.1, I understand what's happened. I know what's happening with Hill, but I'm not going to take this 3-game sample size and lose my mind. Not to mention he was basically like breaking one play away, which he almost did from sort of having a big game last week. He just needed to get over that 100 yards. He did get the touchdown, but 15 carries for 88 yards. He's not getting as much work out of the passing game, obviously, as when Breeze is there. So he's not worth the same amount, but we're not asking for 9K from him. We're asking for, he's cheaper than Aaron Jones is. He's cheaper than some of these other guys. 7.1, even if he puts up only 20, but he's got a ceiling of like 40 plus. Like he really does against, and Philly's been better defensively than I think people give him credit for. But who knows if they're going to be able to move the ball at all? Who knows how it's going to work? I really, really like Kamara at no ownership, 7.1K. He would be my favorite by far play in this game. And honestly, right now, one of my favorite plays on the slate, just because I feel like you don't get that chance very often. Him and Nuke Hopkins strike me like if you play those two guys in lineups, would it really be shocking if next week we're talking about how Alvin Kamara and DeAndre Hopkins were the leading fantasy producers from running back and wide receiver, and meanwhile they're going to be a combined 7 or 8% owned? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you get a lot of these guys this week. You know what I mean? Of guys that you can see that happening with. So
I agree, but don't you think Kamara? Like to me, Kamara, they're talking about a top 3 running back in football.
The only thing, yeah, I agree with that. The only thing is that Philly's defense against the run's actually been pretty good.
I agree with you. It has been pretty good. I'm saying but you might get it on volume alone if Philly has trouble moving the ball with Hurts. By the way, I will have some Hurts to Goddard lineups just as in some long shot tournaments. Hurts as a pivot, another one of my pivots off of Ryan.
You like Goddard more than the other receivers like Rieger and all that stuff.
Yeah. I also like that you take some tight end spot because there's a lot of good receivers, and they just have too many healthy receivers actually at the time. So like, I love Jalen Reagor. I think at some point he does take over, being their top guy, but I'm not going to play a guy who had one target, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, it feels like you're just flipping coins or whatever. If this was a showdown slate with Philly, I would be all over Alshon Jeffrey, but I'm not going to play 3K for a guy who may not even get a look.
Yeah, he doesn't even get snaps, man. I mean, it's
But when he gets snaps, he gets looks. Like, it's weird. I mean, he did in that one game because they had the 2 penalties that he had called back. I don't know. I'm not going to play him, obviously, in a real slate. I just am saying, like, it was a showdown type of situation or something. But yeah, not only really interested, but again, very, very interested in Kamara, and you can even do the thing you want to, and maybe it's not the right slate, but you could play him with the Saints defense at the highest price. Just be a little bit, it'll make your build like much, much different than everyone. You can literally play chalk everywhere else if you like it. And I don't know, I can't resist to continue taking shots on Kamara in these situations.
Yeah, I'm not going to get there, and I wasn't going to do much from this game. I do have the Saints in my season-long defense. That's about it. Yeah, this whole situation's kind of screwed up for me.
So do you think David Montgomery does he have any chance to score like 35 fantasy points? I don't think so, right?
David Montgomery?
Yeah, I'm trying to compare him. He's 600 cheaper than Kamara.
Definitely.
Kamara has an absolute legitimate chance to score 40 every time he plays.
You think so?
He does. I mean, he's done it like 15 times. I mean, he's done it a bunch.
And so you're not believing that it's just a big difference now with the way they're running the offense.
I think the games were all fluky, and I've watched every one of those games, and they all happened, not fluky, but they all happened in very different ways. They were the ball control.
You know what? He obviously has the talent, and you obviously, you have the ownership discount. So I'm not going to argue with you. As opposed to, you could pay the same amount as you get to this next game for, I presume, an uber chalky Austin Eckler, who certainly projects much better. And he certainly projects to be a great play, but you're going to get a 20-1 ownership. I mean, like not 20-1, maybe like a 5-1 ownership discount, between Eckler and Kamara. I mean, Eckler's going to be what? He's going to be 15% at least, right?
Oh, I would guess somewhere higher than 20. Maybe they'll be a little bit nervous because he killed everybody as chalk last week and they lost 45-0. But yeah,
but this is the ultimate for me. If you didn't like any of that game, because this game could
this could be one. Yeah,
it's going to be. I guess it has to be, especially now with Julio out, right? I mean, you get now you get to play Ridley or Gage or whatever. So Clippers, so to speak, Herbert and Keenan Allen off. I mean, these guys just come off a shutout. I mean, they got shut out. They're going to be out to do whatever they want to do if Atlanta lets them. And you know, they got Eckler coming out of the backfield. They got Keenan Allen, you know, doing what he wants. You can play Mike Williams, a home run play. Hunter Henry, all those guys are in play. And now thought Julio was a great play. So if he's out, certainly I can't imagine these other guys not being good plays. So Gage, Ridley. This is kind of interesting, but this is kind of weird to think about. But Smith is. I was hoping that Smith would be out, and it's kind of silly to think this. I was going to say, you know what, Gurley would be a great play if Ito Smith is out. I'm like, do I really need Ito Smith out for Gurley to be a good play? And I think the answer is yes. I think they've been giving Ito just a lot of work here.
Yep.
So that's why I'm kind of off of Gurley here. But aside from that, he'd be a good play. And yeah, I mean, I think this game has to be rated to be kind of chalky, but it's a close spread and Julio out. You know, it raises the roof of some of these other receivers also. And this is certainly a game that could blow up.
The disturbing part for me is both, and don't tell me, I don't know how to answer how this is possible, but both Gage and Ridley get more targets and more yards, more touchdowns, more everything, more points, everything when Julio plays. I don't understand how it's possible, but they do. And it just feels kind of silly though, but because I don't actually think the Atlanta guys are going to be too crazy. Maybe Ridley will get up there as the week progresses, but I don't think Russell Gage is going to be that popular. And
we forgot probably one of the better plays also. I forgot the tight end, Hayden Hurst.
I don't know if Hayden Hurst is going to play either. I heard he doesn't look great at practice. So
really? He
went from a guy I was interested in to being a guy who I just sort of am crossing out right now, and I can always pivot over to him later. I don't really want to play roulette with Jaden Graham and Luke Stalker. I don't know which one would even get more of the passing work unless I hear something if they announce Hurst is out.
It does say he doesn't have an injury designation on the final injury report.
But he practiced yesterday, and he could barely move, they said. Or Wednesday. Wednesday was the practice he could barely move. So even if he's healthy, I don't know how much he plays. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
Even more targets going into Ridley and Gage now, right? I mean,
right. But also, do we maybe consider look, Gurley is just so crazy cheap. It's kind of interesting. I don't know that I still don't think I'm going to end up doing much of it, but I will keep him on my list just as a guy because he's not going to be owned either. But I love the Chargers side of this game. I love Keenan Allen. I think this is the problem I'm having with playing Devonta Adams. Is that if I play Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, look, neither of these guys, Keenan Allen's going to be like 8% owned in a spot where literally if this game was played a few weeks ago, or if the slate broke a little bit differently, you might see like 25% on Keenan Allen in this spot. Double-digit targets in 7 of his last 8 games, including a 19-target game. I just think there's a chance he breaks the slate and ends up as the top receiver here. Against a defense, by the way, that has been playing much better, but we haven't seen them play a team that throws the ball. They were playing New Orleans, twice in the last 3 weeks with Taysom Hill, not Drew Brees. So we don't really know what's happening there. I just think all of these Chargers, I think this might be like you know what? We just got effed. We got the shit beat out of us. Let's play our game. Let's air it out. I like Keenan Allen. I even like Mike Williams. I think it's interesting that if for some reason Russell Gage got popular, wouldn't we just think, okay, well, doesn't it make more sense to then play Mike Williams on the other side? If you look at Russell Gage's double-digit target games, everything is all with Julio in. But I don't think the ownership's going to be high enough anyway. So, yeah, I do like this game. I think you play Ryan. I just don't know. If I play Ridley with him, I want to run back Keenan Allen on the other side. You can do that as a pretty low-owned receiving combination, especially on the Keenan Allen side. But it just, I don't know. I don't feel great about Ridley and Gage, but that I'm definitely going to have exposure to both. I honestly wish I was more decisive on this. The ones I do feel decisive of are Keenan Allen and Mike Williams.
Well, first of all, I mean, Keenan Allen, let's just forget projection systems and forget modeling and stuff like that. Keenan Allen certainly can outscore Devonta Adams. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, he's proven it. It's Keenan Allen could just get one of those Keenan Allen games, man, where he gets 20 targets and, you know what I mean? And it's very possible
Mm-hmm.
And, you'll have one guy at half the ownership of the other. And that's just that's sort of the bottom line, right? Devonta Adams, it's so weird because, like, if I didn't look at any models, I would say, I guess they both have a pretty big floor. I mean, Keenan Allen gets a zillion targets a game, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that maybe Keenan Allen is a little less likely to get, like, zillions of targets since Eckler's been back, maybe. Maybe it just gives Herbert a little more of an option.
He had 11 in the last game and didn't play in the fourth quarter.
That's true.
And
but I don't think 11 targets is enough. I want more than that. I want this one. I want the 15 catches for
You also nailed it at the beginning, by the way, real quick. I just wanted to get, like, what you said about Eckler is exactly why I want to play Alvin Kamara. And not to say that Eckler's not a good play and I don't get it and all that stuff. I do think it's more, first of all, I think there's a lot of different ways things could play in the backfield with them. I know he had the 16 targets in that game against Buffalo, and that felt a little fluky. And last week he had 9, but it was another kind of crazy. They were down crazy. If it's a back and forth game, I don't know. And Atlanta's done a better job against the opposing running backs this year, even though I still don't think they're good. I just would rather take the shot on the guy with the monster ceiling at no ownership. But again, maybe this slate, I don't need to do that so much. I've got so many pivots off the chalk. Maybe I don't need to go that far. So Eckler I'll mix in, but I don't think I'll definitely be well below the field on him. I'll probably just have him in a few lineups where I'm having stacks of this game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to be probably playing a decent amount this week also. There's just too many guys I want to play. And I don't want some of these guys to get there without me having exposure to them. So I think I'm going to play. I mean, even if something as silly as Gurley, I just kind of want him for some reason. So big slate.
Oh man, it's a long one.
I mean, I'll just kind of like go. I'll do what I did before. So I'm gonna just go through my top stacks, right? And believe it or not, my top overall stack was actually Atlanta, and then Green Bay, then Carolina, and then Dallas. Those are my top 4. Just as far as just quarterbacks and receivers. With respect to, I'd have to go back and remind myself of which running backs I kind of have. There's so many of them. I'm really starting to go back to maybe Giovanni Bernard, considering that McKissick is going to be so chalky. Maybe Giovanni Bernard is a great play. Then there's other value guys like Gaskin. And then you get Dalvin Cook at 10%. Then my back to Ezekiel Elliott at probably 5%. It's a lot of guys to play, man. I got to really figure this out somehow.
Yeah, it's tricky. I'll just mention my favorites as we went by from the positions, just factoring everything in combined. And there's plenty of other guys I like, so don't get me wrong. But starting with with quarterback, Ryan. I like Ryan. It's weird. I like Ryan Trubisky. I like Darnold. I know that sounds crazy, but I like Darnold still. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are my main quarterbacks. My favorite running backs: Gaskin, Taylor, Jones, Robinson, Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, and Alvin Kamara. My favorite receivers, Allen, obviously. We keep talking about him. Keenan Allen, DJ Shark, Antonio Brown being super high on him. I don't know why he's over here in the wrong spot. Cook should be over there. That's right. Brandon Cooks as a sort of a sneaky one because nobody's going to play him after the week after he let him down. Lockett, I love what your points were, so I do want exposure to that game. So you sort of sold me with. I really think you're right about that zone. And Curtis Samuel, I already mentioned Brown, Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Michael Gallup. I mean, these are long shot guys. All the Tampa Bay receivers, really. I'm going to have probably one of those guys.
I forgot about that game too. This is ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah. And then, that's most of those my guys. And just real quickly, the tight end, Ingram. I didn't mention Henry when we talked about the last game, but I do like Hunter Henry a lot. Tanyan, Kelsey, and that's most of my. Oh, and Goddard.
And I'll tell you this: the one position where I actually see some separation. I mean, like I said before that I just see a big difference between Adams and the rest of the wide receivers, just purely based on projections and the other stuff. The other one that I see, again, I'm finding it hard to find. I mean, I'll get to them because, defenses, so whatever. But to me, Cowboys and Seattle are like pretty big standouts. I mean, they're both going to be, I presume, really, really chalky, but they do kind of stand out.
Yeah, I agree with those. And it's kind of weird because they're the defenses I want to attack against. So I'm attacking both those teams.
But that's not exactly hypocritical. You know what I mean? Like you can
right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I'm just looking real quickly at my lineup to see if there's anything I missed. I didn't mention DeAndre Swift just now. If he does play, I want him as my run back in that game. We've seen what running backs have done to Green Bay. He can catch the ball in the backfield. Go ahead.
The only thing I would say about that, again, is just the whole thing with Detroit was I had so much fun just slinging the ball. I don't know if the dump offs is going to be the plan, but well, maybe.
I just think against Green Bay that he'll end up getting. I don't know. The thing is, he's not. It's not that he's been catching so many passes. I think he's got huge touchdown upside all the time, and he can catch 4 or 5 passes a game and still get there for you. I just really like that game, and I want a run back from Detroit. So maybe I'm sort of forcing him a little bit, but I do think that he's a guy I have high on my list. But it's only with whether I'm playing Devonta Adams or Aaron Jones.
Hey, can I ask you one other question? I wanted to ask you about something you said earlier, and this could be more of a theory discussion. I know it's been a long video, so I know people are kind of sick of me straying. But you mentioned we were talking about J.D. McKissic, and I asked you this like when I first started talking about DFS, and you mentioned that if you want to play him on DraftKings, fine, but just don't play him on FanDuel, right? So when I hear that, I mean, my first initial instinct is, yeah, I know, I understand. FanDuel doesn't, their scoring rewards, doesn't reward the PPR running backs, they reward touchdowns. And then I think that don't the prices reflect that already? You know what I mean? And or do you think that the pricing just ignores that aspect of it?
Well, so this week the pricing it really makes a difference because J.D. McKissic his price was released before they played their last game and he had 10 receptions.
Oh, okay.
And Gibson got hurt. He would have been the same price if Gibson was playing on DraftKings. So in this case, it isn't reflected. But other times, yes, often it is. And she's out. And we'll talk about this when we get into NBA at some point. But like I do that all the time on FanDuel, is playing these guys who hit threes because no one plays the 3-point shooters, especially in high buy-ins on FanDuel. But the truth is, those guys can still get there in a million different ways. You know what I mean? This doesn't need to be. I don't know. There's too much focus on just not playing those guys in general. But I think in football with the PPR, like a guy like McKissic, even if it's baked in, you're playing him because you want 10 catches for every yard, and you're going to get 20-some fantasy points out of him. He just basically never gets in the end zone. So it's really hard to play him anywhere else. Anyway. So
what we're doing, we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to fire off an NBA thing for tonight. So because of how long this was, it might take us a little while for you to upload this one.
Yeah.
But good luck this week in the NFL. Now, I wonder who's going to be ruled out now that we've given out our picks.
Let's not even play that game. That's too depressing.
It's going to be Zeke ruled out, and it's going to be Pollard season. There you go.
That would be fun. Pollard and Bernard, and then just load up. You play Keenan Allen and Devonta Adams. It's perfect.
There you have
it. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for hanging out there with us. We will be back with you shortly, and we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards this weekend. Good luck, everybody.
Okay. I mean.